Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope everybody's having a great day or a good week. And if not, well, I have some stories for you. These are all from Japan and they're all about the yokai. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, like it does mine, then definitely pull up a stump with me and we can jump right into it. So, thank you for watching. I'm one quarter Japanese, and when I was 16 years old, I moved to Japan to live with my aunt, uncle, and cousins. The details as to why I was moving there will derail the story, so I won't get into that. So my aunt lives in this rural seaside town. It's about an hour or two outside of Sapporo. The house faces a forest and mountains, and the ocean is right behind it. There are also some train tracks between the backyard and ocean, but the train fell into the ocean or something a few years back, I can't remember, and it's been defunct ever since. My aunt and uncle, who I'll call Raiko and Nori, all have pretty much lived in this town their entire lives. My cousins are both girls, they're twins, and they're a few months younger than me. I'll call them Yuko and Aya. Nori is superstitious, mostly because his parents were too. He loves to tell stories about the yokai, whether they happen to him or someone he knows. They're all pretty entertaining, really. Raiko doesn't seem to believe it as strongly as he does. She's my dad's sister, and our family wasn't ever superstitious. Everything goes pretty well for the first few weeks. Aya and Yuko introduced me to their friend, Fumika, and we hit it off pretty well. I find out that she's just as, if not more, superstitious than Nori. I combine that with the teenage fearlessness that she wants to find these things. I don't believe in those things, or I didn't then anyways, but whatever, she doesn't strike me as like the crazy type who would be too into it. About a month since moving, and I'm pretty comfortable in the area. I like taking walks, so on days off school, I take walks into the forest and into the mountains to relax. One day, I was walking as I usually was, and suddenly I hear this giant scream out of nowhere. It sounds like someone is being murdered. Now, this is Japan, so you can't really brush it off as mountain lions. But then I hear a different scream from the same direction, deeper in the forest. I yell out, "Who's there?" It's totally silent. Nothing but my voice echoing. Something about the echo in my voice feels wrong. It's delayed and doesn't sound quite like me. There's another scream, and this time it's closer. Now at this point, I'm not too keen on sticking around for whatever BS is about to happen here, so I turn around and I book it back home. Normally, it's about a half hour to get back to where I was. I walk slow. At my speed though, I make it home in about 5 minutes. Nori is waiting at the door for me. He doesn't even seem to be surprised that I obviously just sprinted all the way home. He gets me some water and sits me down at the table. "It's harmless, don't worry." And I look at him with this confused look and I say, "What?" He smiles. "I heard the screaming too. I've heard it before." "How'd you know about that?" I ask. "I could hear it," he said. "Yamabiko are loud, but they're not dangerous." Yamabiko? He goes on to tell me all about Yamabiko and how they can echo back people's voices and they mimic any sounds that they hear, like really loud parrots kinda is the comparison he made, but they look like these weird dog-looking things. He seems happy to tell me about them, but then he suddenly gets serious. "You're lucky that's all you ran into. There's much worse up in those woods." And I think, oh great, I can't go walking there anymore. And he says, "Let me come with you next time, just in case you run into those." I kinda liked walking alone, but Nori was cool enough, so I agreed. We don't bring it up in front of Raiko or my cousins because they still think that it's a bunch of folk stories. At that point, I wasn't exactly convinced either, but I take Nori a bit more seriously from then on. About 2 weeks after the Yamabiko incident, I'm still walking and Nori is actually good company. I hear some out of the ordinary stuff, but there's nothing that happens of any note. I told Fumika the story and she got excited. She wanted to go into the forest near my house, and I thought, alright, why not? So we planned to meet up a few days later. Aya decided to tag along too. I kinda feel bad about breaking my promise to Nori, but Fumika is cute, and my desire to get laid later outweighs Nori. Sorry. She shows up, and Aya and I make up something about how we're going to the store or something. Raiko is okay with it, but Nori is a little suspicious. But in hindsight, he might have just been a little nervous. So we walk down the street until we're out of their sight, and then we duck into the forest. It being a cloudy day, plus there being tree cover, makes the forest darker than it usually is when I walk up there. Aya already looks properly spooked by the atmosphere, but Fumika is just fearless, it seems. We keep on walking for a while, but we don't find anything and nothing really happens. I'm starting to get a little jittery though, and Aya looks just about as scared as I do. Even Fumika seems uneasy now. At this rate, we'll likely just get lost, so we decided to head back down. And as we're walking, there's this huge thunderclap. We start moving faster, but the forest is already getting darker. It starts to rain heavily. We take shelter under a good-sized tree. I have no idea how long we were out here for, but we thought someone might come look for us. Actually, we were hoping that they would. Somewhere between the trees, though, I see a light. It keeps bobbing back and forth, weaving in through the trees. All three of us keep watching the light. Aya says that it's probably someone else on the mountain that could help us. I'm not exactly sure what she means at first, but she probably thought it was a flashlight. Aya stands up and calls out to them for help. It seems to point in our direction and starts moving toward us. It keeps up that weird bobbing motion though. It gets closer and closer, but I still can't even see an outline of the person who might be holding a flashlight. As it moves toward us, I can't help but thinking just how wrong this all felt. Why did the person not answer us? And it wasn't even that dark, so why have a flashlight? Something tells me to look to my left, and I see another one of those things bobbing around, and then another, farther off, but it's getting closer just like the other two. And I think, what the hell is going on here? This doesn't make any sense. Fumika looks really scared now. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning lights up the forest, and there's no people, there's just the shadows of the trees. Wait a minute, it's just the trees, there's nobody holding any flashlights. I try to tell Aya and Fumika, but for some reason the words won't come out. As the light keeps getting closer, I notice it's blue, not like a flashlight, and flickering. I keep trying to tell Aya and Fumika, but I can't, and Fumika looks to be paralyzed. She's just standing there, wide-eyed, unable to move. I'm just terrified at this point. I think, oh, we're gonna die out here, and this is gonna be terrible. And suddenly, we hear someone yelling in the distance, and they're getting closer, fast. Someone's crashing through the forest, looking for us. I recognize the voice. It's Nori. He comes into view and sees the lights and starts to really freak out. In that moment, it's almost like whatever spell we were under breaks, and we just sprint toward him. And I pass by one of those lights, and from what I can see, it was just a ball of blue fire, a little bigger than my fist, We get the hell out of the forest as fast as we can and get inside. Status is, I'm hyperventilating and terrified. Aya is just staring off in the distance, wide-eyed, and Fumika is just pale as a ghost. Nori tells Aya to go take a shower, and when she leaves the room, he gives a cold stare to Fumika and I. I really thought that he was about to blow a fuse and yell at us, but instead, he just sighs. I ask how he knew that we were in the forest. He said he didn't. He just felt that something was wrong and rushed off to the forest. He saw us surrounded by these fire wisps, and that's when we saw him too. He calls the fire Onibi, which is identical to a will-o'-the-wisp. Paranormal fire created from a dead animal or a person's spirit that can also be created from strong, raw rage or malice. It lures people away and consumes their life force and leaves nothing but a dead husk behind. Apparently, they trap the life force inside of them and they basically imprison your soul for eternity. The Yamabiko wasn't that much to spook me, but good lord, this scared the shit out of me, and Nori knows it too. He warns me about the forest once again, and I listen this time because I know what he meant before when he said that there was worse things in the forest. He continues about how people got lost in the forest and never came back when he was a kid, including people that he knew. He goes on until Aya finishes her shower. I hear him tell her later that day that it's just a natural thing and it's nothing to worry about and it's harmless, but they both know secretly that it's bullshit. Fumika goes home when the rain lets up a little bit, but it keeps raining all day and night, and I don't sleep well that night at all. I keep looking out the window, and I swear I can see the same blue fire at the edge of the forest. This one haunts me to this day because I can't stop thinking about how we'd fallen right into their trap, and how easily that they could have killed us right then and there. The rest of that spring and summer passed by uneventfully. With all our free time in the summer break, you'd think we would have found something, but we didn't. Again, very small, insignificant events that were probably something that wasn't a yokai. One day in the fall, Nori takes Aya, Yuko, and I to his family grave. We all pray, keep it clean, and just do general maintenance of the place. We notice someone off to the side though, or at least I do. It's a woman. She's really pale, and she's dressed in white. This is not quite out of place enough to set off major alarm bells, because she looks human. Nori notices and whispers to us not to stare, so we stop staring. There's no red flags yet because I figured that this was more of an etiquette thing and we were just trying not to be rude to someone else who could be mourning. Now, we finished doing our stuff, but we can still see the woman. She hasn't moved an inch. Okay, maybe she's just busy doing something. But our car is the only one in the parking lot. Okay, well, maybe she walked. We don't know. But then we start seeing her at the corner of her eye as we go home. It's a yokai. I try to tell Nori about it. Raiko overhears. He goes stiff and leaves the room. We have no clue what that was about. I assume that I just saw a ghost, and I check in with Nori to make sure that it doesn't want to kick my ass or kill me or something, and he doesn't actually know. So that night, I try to sleep knowing that there's a ghost following us around and may or may not want to kill us all. I guess I can't sleep, obviously. I try to make myself forget about it by watching YouTube, and I realize at this point that it's weird to hear English again after speaking Japanese this entire time. So eventually I do get a little bit of sleep before school. So the next day at school, one of my cousins asked Raiko if she was in her room at night. Raiko looks confused. No, why would I be? The other says, I thought that I saw you come in. Raiko tells her that it was probably just a dream, but silently, I'm like, oh shit. Not only is there a ghost that might want me dead following us around, but it's gotten into our house. Great. I ask Fumika for a hand. Now, her yokai obsession has gone away some because of the onibi, but she still knows her stuff. And after an intense questioning session, she decides that it's most likely a non-violent ghost that got attached to us because we paid attention to it. Fumika agrees to come over and see if she can do anything about it, but she says that there's not much she can really do. Fumika shows up the next day, and nothing especially spooky happens, just the usual of seeing it out of the corner of my eye all the time. She instantly says that she can feel it. She goes around the house for a while, trying to make something happen, but nothing does. She's kind of sad about it, but I really wasn't all for running into a spooky ghost right now. So, fast forward to later on that night. It's still hard to sleep because again, there's a ghost around. I'm trying to do so when suddenly I feel a wave of sadness come over me. It's like when you're not actually sad, but more that you're next to a friend who's really sad, like you can feel it off of them. And my stomach turns. I get really afraid to open my eyes, but I do so anyways. At the end of my room, it's the woman from the graveyard. She doesn't look like she wants to hurt me or anything. She doesn't look scary at all. She just looks really sad. Like, if I'm honest, I would say that she's kinda cute if it wasn't for the part about being dead. So I work up the courage to ask what she wants. She just shakes her head and comes over. Okay, now this is getting a little weird. She puts a hand on my head. She says something about her son. I'm thinking that this ghost is going to drag me off back to the graveyard thinking that I'm her son. But she doesn't. She just looks at me. And then takes her hand off my head and disappears. And then I never see her again. So by mid-autumn, Fumika and I are hanging out with Yuko or Aya sometimes. It's a slow day, so I decide to head over to her place, which I can ride my bike to. It's this old house up on the side of the mountains, so I usually walk my bike up because it's just not that good to pedal up, even though it's not that far, still in civilization. Since it's on the mountain, it's surrounded by forest. So I get to her house and she seems happy to see me. Her parents say hi, and I know that they like me. So we just go into her room and we play some video games, and the time passes by really quickly. And then randomly, I have to go to the bathroom. So I excuse myself, and this might be an old house, but it's obviously been updated to look a little more modern. I notice that it's getting dark out. This is not that odd, since it's autumn. The sun sets at 7 here, even in the summer. This still means that I've been here for a few hours, though. Through the tiny bathroom window, I can see something that looks like a dog or something moving through the trees. I just assume that it's someone's dog that they let off the leash. So I do my business, I wash up, and I go back downstairs. And I go back to video games. There's these big sliding doors in the living room, so I can see the tree line really well. I keep feeling like I see something moving in the tree line, but every time I try to look at it, it stops. And I just think, oh whatever, who knows what it could be. So after a bit, I kick Fumika's ass in Street Fighter 4, and I turn to her to be smug about it. And she's staring at the tree line. I ask why. Oh, I thought I saw a dog out there. I say, I saw one earlier. It's probably one of your neighbors. She says that none of her neighbors have dogs. In that case, I say it's probably a stray. And we did have a classmate who lost his dog, so maybe that was it. So I open the sliding door and I call to the dog. I can still see the shape moving around the tree line. It seems to be closer and we can see it better. It's definitely a dog, but it doesn't come. So I go back inside after trying and failing, and by this time I'm almost ready to leave. I check outside again. The The dog is now sitting up in the tree like it's the most normal thing. As far as I remember, dogs aren't really known for their ability to climb trees. I point this out to Fumika, and she looks over. The dog thing seems to get a little bigger and jumps out of the tree, and then glides to the ground. The reason it looked bigger is because it has wings? Yeah, screw this. I tell Fumika that I'm just gonna go home. She tells me not to leave the house and calls for her dad and tells him about the dog. He leaves the room and comes back with a little notebook and a baseball bat. He goes outside and starts yelling at the dog. I didn't really catch most of it, but the dog disappeared off into the forest. Fumika says that it's now okay for me to leave. I ask her what the hell that was. She says it's a Hainu, but her dad says it's not. He says, the only Hainu that I've ever heard of has been dead for hundreds of years. Instead, he thinks that it's a kitsune, or another shape-shifting yokai that likes to take the form of a Hainu. Apparently, it's been around the house for a few years now, but it's never hurt anyone. It just likes to transform and mess with people. So, I don't really care what it is, I'm just gonna go home as fast as I can. And thankfully, there were no winged dogs on the way there. Now this one still freaks me out, because it's one of the scarier things that's happened to me. The only abnormal thing that happened during the winter was how much it snows in Hokkaido. And nothing really happens during the spring except for Fumika starts showing interest in me, which I think nice. So it's summer break. It's several weeks, no longer than a month in Japan because of year-round school. So I'm hanging out with my cousins and Fumika, and a lot more people are there. It's some week in the middle of summer break, I don't quite remember. There's 4 of us walking back home after blowing a bunch of money at the tiny arcade the town has. So we're getting close to home and this smell hits us. And no, it's not like the copper and blood type story. It's like rotting fish. And considering that we lived by the ocean, it wasn't that weird, but it stunk. We keep walking in that direction and we just slap on the handy-dandy face mask. It doesn't help a whole lot, but it definitely makes it a little more tolerable. I drop Fumika off at her house because it's a little closer than ours. My cousins and I walk back towards our house, and the smell is still there. It seems to get stronger as we walk home. We're all gagging from the smell at this point, thinking a bunch of fish died on the shore or something. Finally, we get home, and the smell goes away. We asked Nori and Raiko about the smell, but they say they haven't smelled anything. Again, we do live by the ocean, so I just wrote it off as that. The next day, though, Yuko says she feels sick. She's running a temperature of 38.5 degrees Celsius. She spends the day on the couch and in her bed. We take shifts taking care of her with the rest of the family. Fumika comes over to help out. I'm pretty sure that we're her only friends. Raiko wants us to go to the store to get some stuff for Yuko. He hands me a list and some money and tells Fumika to go with me. We go and get the stuff and then start coming back home. The rotting fish smell is still there, strong as ever, so we just rush as quick as we can back home. We give the stuff to Raiko and don't mention the smell. Nori takes Fumika home, and the day passes uneventfully. But that night, I'm staying up late, messaging Fumika, and I start hearing movement outside. It's probably just the wind or some random animal, I think. But the movement keeps up. The longer it goes on, the less that I think it's the wind or just some animal. So I stop and stay quiet, and I listen. The most I can hear is the normal nighttime sounds and Yuko making noises in her sleep. She's probably having a fever dream. I think, whatever, so I just go back to my phone. And I start hearing movement outside again. So I look out the window. There's this big black mass that is moving away from the house. It looks either like a lump of shadows or the blackest black thing you can ever think of, dressed in a black winter coat. It's moving away from the house, kind of fast. Now I know that you can start seeing things when you're too tired, so I say goodnight to Famika and go to sleep. The next day, Yuko is still sick, and her temperature has risen to 38.8. A day passes, and it's about the same, nothing much happens. Yuko's boyfriend comes over to take care of her. My aunt and uncle probably okay with it because Yuko is way too exhausted and sick to do anything, and also, he might get sick too. So, I ask him about the rotting fish smell, and he has no idea what I'm talking about. Either it's gone, or he's dumb and has no sense of smell. I walk outside for a little bit, and it's actually gone, and I think, oh, thank God, that was really awful. I spend the rest of the day talking to Yuko's boyfriend and taking care of her. He's a cool enough guy, he's a little oblivious sometimes, but nice regardless. The day ends, and for no reason, I wake up at 1 in the morning or something, and it stinks like rotting fish so much. I sit up coughing and gagging, and I notice out the window. Something has its face pressed up against it. It's definitely not human. It has jet black skin, and its eyes are bugging out of its skull, and it's got this giant tongue that's hanging out of a hole in its face that I guessed was a mouth. As soon as it notices that I'm awake, the thing shrinks down about a meter. And I don't mean like it seemed to shrink, I mean its face and hands lowered themselves down toward the ground. I'm frozen in shock as I watch it run off down the road. The rotting flesh smell goes away with it. I'm not sure what to do now. Nori would be pissed if I woke him up. So I sit there silently terrified until the sun comes up. I sleep most of the day. Apparently Yuko's fever went down some. Occasionally I get up to eat stuff and maybe go to the bathroom and kind of hang out a little bit, but as far as I care, this day has barely even happened. But that night certainly happened. I can't sleep because I'm scared of the black thing, but I also screwed up my sleep schedule by sleeping all day, so I'm wide awake and hyper aware of everything. There's nothing for several hours. Then, at about 1:30, I hear sounds from Yuko's room. Someone is moving around in there. Now, I might have just left it alone, but there was one thing that made me change my mind. There was this certain smell, and I'll give you one guess as to what it is. That's right, the rotting fish smell was back. It gets really strong really fast. I try not to gag. I get out of bed and rush into Yuko's room. The thing I saw at the window is on all fours, leaning over her and using its terrifying-looking tongue to lick her entire body. I don't mean like it was doing it in a sexual way or whatever, I just mean that it was licking her like how a dog might lick your face. Again, I'm petrified, watching this thing. Yuko is groaning as it sticks its tongue down her throat. This is what snaps me out of my trance. My brain doesn't even bother to go into Japanese mode. I scream, "What the F?" in good old American English. Suddenly, it seems like the entire house starts moving. I hear Nori getting up. I hear movement from Aya's room too. And then Yuko wakes up with this thing's tongue stuck in her mouth. She makes a gurgle as the thing retracts its tongue from her throat, and then she starts screaming. I hear Aya open the door, but turns to the corner of the bathroom and vomits. Nori rushes into the room and turns on the light before the thing can escape. I see it entirely now. It looks like a large, bald man, but the skin is the blackest black I've ever seen, and it's wearing a black robe on top of that, its eyes bugged out. It's kind of like a monk's robe almost. Like I said, its eyes are still huge, and the head this thing has is like a permanent expression of surprise. The nose is malformed. The way it's stuck on top of its protruding lips makes it look like a turtle. It has clawed hands that make it look like one even more. The ears are way too big for its head, like if you took someone's ears and pulled on them from the tops and the lobes until they were stretched beyond recognition. It makes this sort of ungodly hissing noise and shrinks down. It slithers backwards out the window Yuko is losing her shit. Nori goes to try and comfort her. Aya is still over the toilet, and I'm trying not to vomit. And Raiko rushes into Yuko's room to help Nori console her. Somehow, they convince her that it was a hallucination and that she screamed, so we all came to check on her. In the morning, Nori goes with me to the town's temple and talks to the priest. He agrees to come to the house and does some sort of blessing to keep the black turtle monk creature thing away. It must have worked because the weird creature never came back again, and Yuko slowly gets better. Later, I asked Nori about what the thing was. Kinda scary that he doesn't even know. He said he's never heard of it. Every time I smell something fishy now, I think about the weird creature. This one has stuck with me since it happened. For another few months, everything stays away, probably because of the blessing. Fall passes, nothing happens. Winter comes. Fumika and I have started dating for real now, and I see her regularly. Her parents are okay with me coming over. I usually get Nori to take me to her place because it's colder than Frosty's balls and the roads are way too snowy to walk on. He's fine with it because he's friends with her dad and he likes to see him anyways. Sometime mid-December, we're over at her house. She and I are just huddled under a blanket watching TV together. Nori and Fumika's dad are talking and seem to be having a great time. The whole time is just really comfy. Maybe about 2 or 3 hours later, I notice that Nori and her dad have stopped talking. I look over at them and they're both just staring out the sliding doors at the trees. I turn to look out there. I'm not sure what I'm looking for, but I remember the kitsune or hainu or whatever I saw before, and I think maybe that's it. Fumika seems to catch on. Soon we're all staring out there. I try to ask Nori what he's looking at, but he just shushes me and points outside. I can almost make a shape out of the trees. I still think that what I'm seeing is what I saw before, but I can't tell from the trees because it blends in really well. But I do see movement, and that's when it hits me. Whatever this is big. Okay, maybe not that big, but compared to any normal animals that of the area, it was far larger. I think maybe it was a bear. There is a species called Hokkaido or something like a grizzly bear, but I've never seen one of those out in the woods. Besides, it was winter and they should be hibernating. I go back to watching TV. Maybe it hadn't slept yet or woke up to eat something. Fumika's dad gets up and crosses the curtains of the window in the kitchen and then goes to the doors and draws the curtains. And I think, okay. A little later, Nori tells me that we're spending the night. He says it's because of the snow. And I didn't think it was snowing that much. But whatever, I don't care. I sent a text to Raiko and says that Nori already told her. So I eat dinner with Nori, Fumika, and her family, and they let me shower, and they put a futon down on the living room floor. Since they only had one extra, Nori volunteered to sleep on the couch. So I just chill with Fumika until I almost drift off, around 11:30 or so. Since everyone is tired by then, we all agree to go to sleep. Sleep pretty well for about 2 to 3 hours, but then I wake up around 2 to hear thumping on the sliding door. I start to get up to see what it is. Nori whisper shouts at me to stop, and I jump because I didn't know that he was awake, and all I could think of was, oh shit, the black thing came back to finish the job. He tells me that it's just a curious animal, and if I move too much, I might hear it and get spooked. He says just to go back to sleep and ignore the sounds, and I think, yeah, that's not happening. So the thumps go on for a while. It kinda sounded like if you hit glass with a beanbag, just kinda soft and dull. And then, the thumps stop, but a different noise starts. It's these weird, guttural sounds, but nothing that an animal couldn't make. They sound choppy, like it's taking up a whole breath just to say it, and it keeps going, and then elongates out a little bit, and then there's like a combination of the two, short and long. It could be an animal, but this is still really weird. It starts making different noises, like a da, re, dare, like that. And I think, is this thing trying to talk? And then the words get a little clearer. I'm trying my very best not to scream. A few minutes ago, it was just animal noises, and now it sounds almost like a person, but it wasn't normal. It's just repeating the dare desuka, dare, dare, and if you don't know any Japanese, dare means who, and dare desuka means who are you or who is it, but is more formal. It repeats like this for a few more minutes before going totally silent. Eventually, I fall asleep from pure exhaustion. We go home in the morning, scraping, the brick dust out of my boxers, and we just try to pass it off as a normal animal. So that's all I have for now, but let me know if any of you have yokai stories. So, what did you think of those stories? I thought they were great myself. I love reading about Japanese yokai, about Chinese lore, European lore, just anything I can get my hands on. It's fun to read. So that being said, if you have any of your own stories, then I have an email below that you can send them to, and they'll probably end up in a video. And if you want to support the channel, I have links to a PayPal, a Patreon, and all that stuff down in the description as well. So, I shall see you in the next one. Thank you for pulling up a stump for this longer one this time, and I shall see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.